Hi, I'm Joel at David's Guitar Loft, and today we're going to be talking about using your triads. So maybe you're learning triad shapes and you're trying to incorporate them into your playing. A good way that I like to do is to take a 1, 4, and 5 chord. So if you're studying theory, those will be 3 basic chords in a key, and if you don't know that, you can learn that on another video. But we're going to take 3 basic shapes. So we're going to take the key of A. So we're going to have an A chord, a D chord, and an E chord. And so we're going to take only 3 strings for this. We're just going to nail it down to just a small area. So sometimes it's easier to learn if you only have a small little area to work with. So the concept here is to play more melodic. So people will talk about targeting chord tones. You see a lot about targeting chord tones. You also see a lot about learning triads. And sometimes students are like, well, now what do I do? So this is something you can do. So we're going to take the first chord is going to be our A triad. So the top 3 strings only, and I'm at the 5th fret here. I've got my A, my E, and my C sharp. So that's going to be my root, my 5th, and my 3rd for the A chord. So we're going to take that shape. So we're going to cover the 3 shapes first. Then our D major chord. So now on this one I've got my D, my F sharp, and my A. So that's my root, my 3rd, and my 5th of the D chord. So I've got that triad. And then the E chord in that same area. That's the goal here, is to put them all in the same area. So now this position here, I've got the E chord. So now the E is in the middle. That's the root. The G sharp is the 3rd, and the B is the 5th. So if you're learning these shapes, and you can put them in one position. So tip number 1, first you got to learn your triads. So if you're trying to learn your A in your different positions, and you've got your D chords, and you've got your E chords, and then you're going to put them in one position. So that's what we're doing. We're going to start with this one position. So we're right here at the 5th fret range, so kind of 4th position. This is something that's super simple. And when I show students this, it usually clicks when you only take these 3 shapes in this one little area. Don't be tempted to move around the fretboard. So what I'm going to do is look at each chord shape and then go to the next one and see where if there is a common tone, or where a note will change. So even if you don't know the letter names, or you don't know the roots if it's a 3rd or a 5th, if you just have these shapes down, really that's what I'm looking at, is just one shape to the next shape. So this A chord going to a D chord, the A note is a common note, so that's in both of those chords. But on the A chord, the 2nd string here, this E is going to move up to an F sharp when I get to the D. And the C sharp will move up to a D. So those little transitions will really make that chord change. So if I look at just saying, all right, I'm going to play an A chord, you might hear that I went to a D chord. Your ear is going to be drawn to something different. So if I go to the C sharp, now I'm on a D. So that little change from chord shape to chord shape. Now if you play the scale around it, all those notes in the scale for the key of A, this is an A major scale, those scale tones, scale notes, the notes of the A major scale, are surrounding this position where these chords are sitting inside of that. So you can always start with the chord tones and then add a note from the scale. But right now we're keeping it simple. And we're going to go from an A to a D back to an E. And then we can finish up back on the A. So we've gone from the A to the D chord. And now from the D chord to get to the E, I'm looking at the 7th fret notes here, and I've got a 5th fret note up here on the D chord, and the E has a little bit of a movement back to the 4th fret, 5th fret. So any one of those notes will change. There's not a common note within there. So any of those notes could be used. So if I'm going from D to the E, that top string will be great. If I'm going from the 2nd string, that F sharp to E, that's a good one. And if I'm on a D, I'm going to go down to the B. So So any one of those notes will be a good transition note. So going from E to A, now I'm looking at this shape and looking at what can I capitalize on, going from the G sharp to the A. I could go from a G sharp to an A. I also go from a B to the C sharp. The E note is in both of those. So now, if you can, try to just play single notes and then move to the new chord. And you can start to play a little bit more with rhythm or make it more melodic, but try to limit yourself to just the chord tones. And it's kind of hard because there's not a lot to go on, so it's not as hip. It's not hip yet. So you can hear the chords going by, and if you let them ring out, it does kind of sound like you're playing, just the chords again. But in the context of a solo, this is where we get into the scale. So if I want to play an A chord, and then look at those notes around it with the scale, and then targeting that new shape. So you've spent some time looking at the A chord to the D chord move. Well, play your scale, and then make your move to the new chord tone in the new chord. So if I'm playing an A, now I'm on the D chord. So instead of playing the D chord all the way, I'll just play scale tones. Now I'm on a chord that's good with the D. And then if I want to go to the E chord, without playing the chord, just the scale, maybe land on this note, target that note. So now if I'm looking at the A to the D, the D to the E, and then back to the A of some sort. So, all right, so let's break this down one string at a time. So this is the A major scale on the top 3 strings only in this first position here. If you've learned your first major scale, you can do this. So you're going to take the 3 notes that are on the high E string here, the G sharp, the A, and the B. And you're going to look at which one of those notes is in which chord. So if I have an A, I have an A on that first one. So that's going to be a great note if I'm on an A chord. If I'm on a D chord, that A is going to be a great note. Now if I'm on an E, that's the G sharp note that's going to be a good note. And then also the B is one of the notes in the E chord. So if I'm only looking at these 3 notes in the scale, A chord, D chord, and then if I go to the E or the B, back to the A. So on that string, I know which one of those 3 notes is going to fit which chord. Now on the second string, I've got an E and an F sharp. So if I only have 2 notes, I only have those 2 notes to work with. So this is going to be pretty simple. But I've got an A chord, that's going to be within the A chord. The F sharp's going to be the note I want to hit if I'm on a D chord. Back to the E if I'm on the E chord. So that one's pretty straightforward. So that string, I can target the A, and then go up to the F sharp for the D, back to the E, and stay on it for the A chord. Now this string, I've got the B, C sharp, and D notes. So I'm going to target the C sharp if I'm on an A chord. I can see that is the chord tone right there. Now if I go to the D chord, it's going to be the D note. And then on the B note for the E chord. So that string, this is my A chord tone. They all change for this one. There's the D, there's the E, back to the A chord. So each string, you can map out which one of those notes is going to sound good. So if I can do this with the droning note, let's see if we can make it happen. So A, there's your D, E, back to let's go to the second string. Do the same thing. A. Went down the third string there for a second. It's all right. All right, now we're going to go to the first string. So now we have the A. We're going to go to a D chord. It's the same note. And then the E chord is where we really get the shift. Back to the A. So then you just piece it together and see if you can hear the chords changing as you're playing. Without the chords in the background, you can hear, maybe, hopefully, some of that happening. So if I'm on an A chord, we'll start off. Hear that going to D. And whoops. There's your E. Back to A. So those are some simple ideas. Again, nothing too hip or anything crazy. Just taking three shapes, three triad shapes, and they're different inversions, so we're keeping them in one position. So this is your 1 chord in the key of A. This is your 4 chord, the D. 5 chord is your E. So just take your 1, 4, and 5, put them in one position, overlap it with the scale, and here we're just taking only 3 strings, so it's just real limited. And see if you can just spend some time with it, and next time you play your scale, you'll see those notes pop out a little bit more, and then that leads you down the path of targeting chord tones. But it's all within the same scale, so it's not like you have to learn, oh, now I'm on an A chord and I got to learn an A scale, and I switch to D, now I got some D scale I got to switch to, and oh, now it's an E scale. It's all with the same scale notes, but you're targeting those little chord tones within each one. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you like any of our videos, please subscribe, hit that like button, and come down to David's Guitar Loft in Webster Groves and say hello, or maybe sign up for a lesson.